everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Creep Report Thursday, and here's why. I got the great Joanna Klonsky and Jake Lewis standing by. They listened to me for a second time. Inside story. I won't tell you what that's all about. And they're going to be talking about AIPAC and the fight against AIPAC. Two fronts. They tag team as communication specialists in two congressional races. The 9th congressional, where Danny Biss won, that was their client. And the 2nd congressional district, where Rob Peters lost, that was their client. Dear friend of the show, Robert Peters. So I'll get into that. Before I do, I just have to talk about the story that broke yesterday in the New York Times. Horrific story. We're talking about it in greater length with a couple of guests, tomorrow and next week. The story about Cesar Chavez, the great labor leader, who turns out, after all these years, the secrets come out, and he has sexually abused, several women. Well, they were girls at the time. 2 of them were girls. The great Dolores Huerta, she finally came forth at the age, I think she's 95, Joanna, and she said she was raped by Cesar Chavez and had 2 children by him. It's a horrific story. It's tough to read, particularly if you're an old lefty like me. You grew up idolizing Cesar Chavez. I would say he's like, if you could do a top 10 list of great lefties, it's been a rough week or a rough month, I would say, for people who foolishly idolize anybody, but including people like me who idolize lefties. First Noam Chomsky, up to his eyebrows in Epstein Gate, and now the story of Cesar Chavez. Very disturbing. Same old pattern that Joanna and I would talk about. A powerful man uses his power to sexually abuse younger, in this case, girls, and then intimidates them into silence. And everybody around them knows nothing, sees nothing, covers it all up. Joanna and I used to talk about this all the time in the realm of powerful men in politics, powerful men in Hollywood, powerful men in sports. And Cesar Chavez, man, wow, that one was really hard to take. Right below it, Joanna and Jake, you just have to sit through this one. I apologize. But right below it, see, this is old school. This is like something Joanna's mom would do to her. Joanna, right below it in the New York Times is a story. They had a mission: deep clean Epstein's online reputation. This story is fascinating in a whole other realm. I urge everybody to read this one as well. A deep dive investigation in how Jeffrey Epstein, in like around 2010, hired a bunch of computer hackers and junk computer nerds to clean up his reputation by using their prowess on computers to like to bury evidence of his being convicted or the plea bargain he took in Miami. Julia Brown later on broke it wide open in her Miami Herald investigation. And fascinating reading. But Joanna, I'll say this. In the story, they explain all these hackers that he hired and all the attempts they used to bury everything. They created a whole new Jeffrey Epstein and flooded the internet with stories about a different guy named Jeffrey Epstein to like bury the real Jeffrey Epstein, if you follow what I just said on that one. But still, Wikipedia would be fighting them and going back and correcting the changes they were making. So here's the ultimate point, Joanna, and I'll turn it over. You can riff on this, and you can riff on Cesar Chavez as well. All those sleazebags who shared his dinner table knew what he was up to, Joanna Klonsky. Okay? They all go, oh, I'm 2019. They're like, I didn't know. Oh, I'm caught off guard. I didn't know. Oh, yeah, it was there on Wikipedia, because Wikipedia was fighting for about 10 years against Epstein's hackers to keep pure the record about what this man did. It's all in the article. So it's like Woody Allen and the gang, Noam, my guy Noam Chomsky. We didn't know. All you got to do is Google the name, look up Wikipedia, and it would be there. And I just think this is, Joanna, part of the ongoing maneuvers, part of the problem, the cover-up. Anyway, welcome back, Joanna and Jake. Before we bring Jake on, Joanna, I just got to hear your thoughts about this stuff. Go ahead.
All right, let me start with Epstein because it's easier. Yes, the people who claimed that they didn't know, or I've been thinking about this a lot because the president of my alma mater, Leon Botstein, is accused of cavorting with Epstein. He says it was just for fundraising purposes. He says he knew, I can't remember the exact quote, he knew about Epstein having an issue, but he thought he was, I think he used this phrase, a run-of-the-mill sex offender. And that he didn't understand that he was a truly running an international sex trafficking ring. There's a petition among alumni and students of Bard College where I attended, pushing for his resignation or firing. We'll see where it goes. It doesn't seem clear whether he actually engaged in any sort of sexual misconduct. He says he can't remember whether he was at the island or not. To me, that is kind of beyond the pale. I remember every island I've ever been to, okay? Like, I don't even care what island we're talking about. So I think I just use that as an example, but I think these are the kind of narratives that we're just seeing people pick apart now. It just doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
I believe Epstein's first charges were in 2008. So if you claim you didn't know, to me, it doesn't withstand any scrutiny whatsoever. Cesar Chavez is a painful one. I cringed when you called it the creep report. It's hard for me to adjust the way that I think about Cesar Chavez as a hero, someone we've all been raised to idolize and lionize and think of as a hero. To refer to him even as a creep is like a bit jarring. But we're going to have to confront the true nature of his legacy. I think as a movement, as a labor movement, as a progressive movement, there are so many things named after him. There are so many places we go where there's a portrait of him hanging on the wall. It's quite clear from these testimonies of the women who've come forward and who've spoken to the New York Times that it's time for us to take them down off the wall. So,
yeah. Like I said, this is a conversation I'll be having on other shows. Yes. So I'm going to resist the temptation to follow up Joanna. There's a lot of follows I could have.
We have a lot to talk about.
Can I make one point on this?
Go ahead,
before
Jake
we move
Lewis,
on to the next topic?
Yes.
I agree with everything Joanna said. I think it's interesting that the two stories you brought up are both out of the New York Times, the premier investigative journalism, at least print investigative journalism outlet in the country. So here we are in 2026, rich and powerful people misbehaving or committing these types of crimes is not anything new. But the number of news organizations that exist to investigate this type of conduct and expose it is dwindling. Yeah. You've got the New York Times that has the resources to go in and do these types of investigations. But beyond that, local newspapers, local news TV stations are being consolidated. They're closing, they're laying off reporters. And then on the other side of the ledger, you have social media, which makes it much easier for people to at least bring some of these types of things to light, but obviously without the type of scrutiny that a traditional news media environment provides. So on the one hand, you've got traditional media dwindling, you've got the rise of social media, and then you still have men behaving badly or much, much worse. It's going to be interesting to see. I do not have optimism in the future of humanity to think that this type of behavior is going to stop anytime soon, unfortunately, but it's going to be interesting to see how these types of stories come to light, as the media ecosystem changes so quickly.
Yeah, I listen, man, I just got to say this about the New York Times. On this show, Jake, we make fun of the New York Times so much. It's and we just this is me speaking, not Joanna or Jake. I believe its political coverage is a caricature of itself, and it's hilarious. And I have guests. We like to go through and make fun of their headlines. It's the political coverage, but they're second to none. I always say this, but I feel compelled to say this. I don't know what I would do without my subscription to it. I'm like old school subscription, Jake. Look at that. That's a newspaper. And
that's what I'm saying. You got you. I was gonna say, did you print that out?
Here's this other one, which I still haven't gotten around to talking about a NIMBY fight over at detention centers. So yeah, it's invaluable.
I'll just say, some of your listeners may know some of my work has involved helping survivors of sexual violence come forward and break their stories, tell their stories publicly about powerful men. And in the instances where I've been able to do that in the New York Times, it has been extremely impactful. Anytime I have the opportunity to do it in the New York Times, I'm going to do it, even despite all their flaws.
No, yeah. New York Times is no joke. I love you, New York Times, but your political coverage is a joke. All right, let's move away from that. I do not want to get Joanna and Jake in trouble with New York Times friends. So AIPAC is what we were going to talk about. This is a topic of conversation. Joanna and Jake, it's just all the time on my show with pretty much every guest that comes on has an opinion about AIPAC and the impact they've had on American politics. And their attempt to, this is me speaking, not Jake or Joanna. This is the standard Ben line about them. They're one of the most cynical operations I've ever seen in American politics, which is saying a lot.
I'll co-sign that.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know. They believe in one thing and one thing only, electing Congress people or senators or presidents, for that matter, who will do anything that Netanyahu wants them to do. And if they can't get that kind of rubber stamp, at least they'll try to get someone who is not passionately, openly defending Palestinian people who are getting slaughtered, the rights of Palestinian people to have their own state, and even people who go so far as to say Israel itself does not have a right to exist. So that's their goal, and to get there, they'll promote it just about anybody. They don't care if Democrat or Republican. They don't care within the Republican Party if they are insurrectionists or support the nuttiest things that Donald Trump comes up with. And in the Democratic Party, they'll use all kinds of tricks to try to confuse voters who are already barely paying attention anyway. Joanna and I don't need to relitigate that one, but I got a feeling we will. And some of the tactics they used in this last run, particularly in the 9th Congressional, were like, on the surface, hilarious. And so bizarre, twisted, and so corrosive to the American political system. And I know they don't care. I know they don't care what the impact is on the American political system, that they brag on one hand that they defeated Bushra in the 9th Congressional. We'll get into the specifics of this. We defeated a person who could have been a tribe member, member of the tribe. But they did it. They didn't talk about this. They did it by airing a commercial promoting her. It doesn't get more twisted than that. I am done. I'm going to step off of my my soapbox. I'm going to allow Joanna to step on hers and Jake to step on his. We'll start with Joanna. Joanna, what part of what I just said do you disagree with or agree with? And what would you like to add about AIPAC? Go.
Oh, boy. I actually think Jake should go first.
Okay, Jake, go first.
Well, no, look, I don't think I disagree with much of what you just said. What AIPAC did in Chicago was dark money, super PAC politics taken to absurdist lengths. They twisted themselves up in knots, attacking or promoting a variety of different candidates across the 4 different open congressional seats. And I think one of the reasons why it became so absurd in Chicago is because we had so many different open seats at the same time. We've got 4 different open congressional primaries, along with an open Senate seat, a variety of other state and local seats. But those 4 open congressional primaries saw $22 million of AIPAC-backed super PAC money across a single media market, the Chicago media market, plus millions more in directed contributions. And we can talk a little bit about some of the specifics if you're interested about exactly what they did and how. But the end result was that voters, anytime you turned on the TV, were bombarded with ad after ad supporting or attacking candidates from organizations with acronym names or sort of innocuous general names like Elect Chicago Women or Affordable Chicago Now. And after 6-8 weeks of that kind of media bombardment, it became impossible to ignore, even for your average Democratic voter that would say, "Hey, wait a minute, there's something not quite right going on here." I mean, there is something is off about these ads. Something is off about this dark money. And then you add in some good coverage from local media sources here who really worked hard to expose what was happening. And by the end of it, AIPAC had to resort to extreme lengths to hide what they were doing and why. And on election night, they took a number of really significant losses. And so in the wake of that, I think folks are trying to put the pieces together both locally and nationally about what it means for AIPAC and what it means for progressives and how this is going to play for the rest of the country. But in my mind, it was a huge loss for AIPAC, both in terms of their, the number of representatives in Congress that they'll have supporting them, and in terms of their just general brand and standing amongst Democratic voters. And that is going to continue to erode as time goes on. And continue to make it harder and harder for them to achieve their ultimate right-wing objectives.
Joanna?
Yeah, obviously that is all true. Also, I think it's important to understand, why are they going by these fake names? Why don't they just stand on business, as the kids say, and call it AIPAC, which stands for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or even use their on-the-record super PAC that everyone knows or insiders know is associated with AIPAC, which is called the United Democracy Project. A pretty innocuous name, but is associated with AIPAC. Instead, they use these names: Affordable Chicago Now, Elect Chicago Women, Chicago, what was the other one? Chicago
Progressive Partnership.
And then they took it to another level and got legal authority to just say paid for by, instead of Affordable Chicago Now, even ACN, instead of Elect Chicago Women, ECW.
ECW.
Why did they go 3 layers deep to conceal who they are? Because they know that what they're actually doing is not popular. If people knew what they were looking at, they wouldn't like it, Democratic primary voters. If they just signed it themselves, paid for by us, people wouldn't like it. And if their ads actually addressed the subject matter that they care about, which is U.S. policy in Gaza and around the world with respect to the Middle East, they also wouldn't like it. Democratic primary voters in particular do not support this war in Iran, which is a top priority of AIPAC. They're the #1 cheerleader of this war. They don't support U.S. involvement in bombing civilians in Gaza and paying that we're footing the bill for it. This is increasingly unpopular. And so if the ads dealt with what their actual policy agenda is, it would be a total flop. Instead, the ads are these nice, what we saw in the New Jersey 11th congressional district, where the ads seemed like they were coming from the left, in fact, attacking Tom Malinowski was the candidate for having voted for ICE funding.
Yeah.
This is their playbook. And this is the similar playbook that we saw here. They can't say who they really are and what they really care about, because they would be outright rejected and run out of town on a rail by Democratic primary voters if they did. They're toxic.
Yeah.
They have become toxic.
So, all right, I'd like to get into that, those tactics, because I think they'd be better off. Well, let me start like I always start. The last person in the world you should take advice from, AIPAC, is me. As Joanna knows, I have the worst advice when it comes to advising candidates for political office. Usually, most of the candidates I vote for lose. And it would have been, if I lived in the 9th and the 2nd, I would have voted for losing candidates. So AIPAC, you should not take advice from me. But I just think, be honest. Just come out and say who you are, what you support, why you like Laura Fine so much in the 9th, because she's going to support us no matter what we want. Just be honest.
Yeah, they can't.
Right. No, you're seeing these super PACs realize. So there were 3 main super PACs that operated, three sort of industries that operated in Chicago in this past election. So there was AIPAC, there's crypto, and there was AI. Yeah. And for each of them, they create sort of somewhat innocuous names. They run ads that, generally speaking, don't have anything to do with the interests that they actually have or their policy objectives. And they sort of scramble voters' brains. I mean, I think voters watching TV or receiving mail, and Lord knows there was a ton of mail flying around, find it very difficult to sort through who is sending me this information, what do they actually want, who is actually supported by a candidate, which is an outside group. And that creates a pretty chaotic ecosystem for voters to try and understand, the signal from the noise here. And you're absolutely right. They have no interest in being straightforward or transparent about who they are or what they're doing. But I want to make an important distinction here between crypto and AI and AIPAC, at least when it comes to what they did in Chicago. AIPAC created shell super PACs. That is, super PACs that popped up in late January that have no disclosure of their donors. The human beings listed on their disclosure forms, I'm personally skeptical if they even exist or not. They're registered to co-working spaces. They have the people listed have never responded to a phone call or an email. So they have shell super PACs that use, in many cases, shell vendors. That is to say, if you're a mail vendor or a television ad maker, a lot of these folks created different entities that would eventually be listed on disclosure forms to try and hide who is actually doing the work here. And then beyond that, what we saw in New Jersey was even when there is disclosure of their donors, they created shell donors who are, recently created either 501c4s or business accounts. You go and you register an LLC in Delaware, and suddenly that LLC, which was created, a few weeks or months ago, is donating millions of dollars to these shell entities. So the sort of nesting egg of opaque, non-transparent, but huge amount of money spent here makes it unbelievably difficult, not only for voters, but also for, the news media, for candidates themselves to understand what's going on. And all of that is because of what Joanna said, which is they are so unbelievably toxic to Democratic voters that even the slightest hint of who they are and what they are doing is almost, it will greatly reduce their preferred candidate's chance of winning.
Yeah.
So they have to go to these absurdist lengths to hide what's going on. It is very, very dangerous for democracy.
All right. So, wow, shell donors. That just listeners, just think about that one. Shell PACs funded by shell donors
Using shell vendors.
Using shell vendors. God damn. AIPAC, just come out and say it. Just come out and say, we love Laura Fine. Just say it.
And Ben,
go ahead.
The crazy thing is, they did finally say it after the polls closed on election day. So they refused comment for weeks and weeks. The AIPAC was asked over and over again, hey, you guys supporting Laura Fine? You supporting Donna Miller? You supporting any of these candidates? And over, AIPAC no commented the press. And then at 7:01 p.m., when the polls closed, suddenly their Twitter account came alive with all types of hot takes, trying to either claim credit for certain candidates, move the goalposts on who they actually wanted to win and why, which had absolutely no relationship to the way in which they were acting for weeks leading up to the election. And generally speaking, fire off some snarky tweets to the losers, sort of spiking the football after they were clearly sweating the results down the stretch there. So the bottom line here is they are so unbelievably toxic that they have to resort to these just absurd lengths to hide what they're doing. And then they have to sort of turn on a dime and say, actually, we were right all along. And boy, didn't we have such a great night. And it's just impossible to believe.
Oh, my goodness.
There's
Go ahead.
There's another couple of things that I want to point out that we saw in Illinois this cycle with respect to AIPAC. One is they endorsed 4 candidates for Congress. Okay. Melissa Conyers-Ervin in Illinois 7th Congressional District, Donna Miller in the 2nd, Laura Fine in the 9th. I didn't do these in numerical order. And Melissa Bean in the 8th. They endorsed 4 women. And that is something that we see all over the country. They really try to endorse women candidates wherever possible, which is, again, quite cynical, where then if you start to criticize them, you're a sexist for taking this money. It really offends my personal sensibilities, as you know. The other thing that we saw is that sometimes they will they'll pick a candidate who's a woman who might not know anything about this subject matter when it comes to U.S. policy, the U.S.-Israel policy relationship. They're not necessarily dyed-in-the-wool Zionists, They're people who are willing to say what they need to say to get the money. In some cases, not in all. But in some cases, the question is, hey, if we support you, are you going to vote in support of a blank check for the Netanyahu government for U.S. military aid to Israel in perpetuity? Are you going to vote for this war effort in Iran in perpetuity for as much as we need? No questions asked, forever. Unconditional aid. And if you say yes, you're going to get $5 million for your campaign, plus whatever individual donors give to you. And if you say no, we're going to come at you with everything we've got. So sometimes you have these candidates who say, well, yeah, I don't really have another path to get the money I need. I'll say what I need to say to get this done. I don't really understand the implications of this or know very much about the issue, but like these people are offering me millions of dollars and nobody else is. That's part of the way this works out. In some cases, they pick people who truly believe in their agenda. It is my personal opinion that I think Laura Fine really is aligned with their policy agenda personally, but that is not necessarily the case with all of them.
Okay, so there's two strands I want to follow, but I'm gonna get back to the what I call the trash talking in the aftermath of the election, Jake, to talk about, which is hilarious. The trash talking after an election by all candidates is pretty funny. It's so absurd, but AIPAC is really over to
everyone talks.
Everybody does the trash talking, but we'll get into that.
does.
But I just got to follow up on what Joanna, your last riff, and that is this. We had this conversation. This is like a replica of the conversation we had yesterday, Joanna and myself. Which, by the way, if only that got aired. Oh boy. Anyway, no, just kidding. But
more curse words is all.
Yeah, F-bomb flying. But I think in general that the candidates are more sophisticated than you're giving them credit for. I think that any candidate that takes AIPAC money understands the game that's being played, and their game that they're probably going to play is they're just not going to talk about the issue. So I don't think like any. I don't believe that if you take AIPAC money, once you get to Washington, you absolutely have to vote for, let's say, the war fighting in Iran. I believe you can do it. I agree that to a certain degree what I said to Joanna on the phone yesterday, which I've been saying ever, it's all kind of like a variation of Harold Washington's advice. I've been using this line for over and over. Joanna's going to hear it now for the second time in 24 hours. And that is this. Jake's hearing it for the first time. Harold Washington, mayor of Chicago, greatest mayor Chicago ever had. I know Joanna agrees with me. And she better. In 1983, Jane Byrne, running against him, would pass out turkeys to people who lived in CHA housing in Chicago. It said, vote for me. And Harold's advice was, take the turkeys and vote for me, which is great advice as a metaphor, Jake, for anything. And so, again, if I were a campaign manager, what a disaster that would be, I'd say, take the turkey and do whatever you want. Once you're in office, what are they going to do?
So,
go ahead.
Joanna, go on then.
Okay, look, I don't disagree with anything you said. It's hard in practice. Some people have done it. Some people have, we've seen, there are examples of candidates who've gotten AIPAC support coming in and changing the way they vote, signing on to the Block Bombs Act, sponsored by Delia Ramirez and other such policies. But during the campaign itself, in order to get the money, you have to play the part and you have to say the things that need to be said. And there are some people who are going to vote the way that they have committed to vote. And until proven otherwise, we're going to have to assume that they're going to do what they committed to do.
The reality is that the candidates in Illinois who took the AIPAC money thought that maybe they'd get a few questions here or there and they'd have to knock that down once or twice, but it'd be a little speed bump in the road, and then the campaign would continue apace and they would have all of this money behind them and be successful and win. And they did not realize, and this is especially true in 9 for a bunch of reasons, but I think it's true all over the place. They did not realize the amount of scrutiny that they were going to get and the backlash that they were going to get from Democratic voters for being affiliated with AIPAC. And they never really found a decent answer to really simple, basic questions about where their stance was with respect to AIPAC, if AIPAC had endorsed them. I mean, that's one of the other sort of side notes here is AIPAC never officially endorsed any of these candidates. They never put it on their website. They never put out a press release, which gave these candidates the chance to say, oh, gee, I'm not endorsed by them. What are you talking about? I just happen to be getting enormous amounts of money from them and the super PAC support from elect Chicago women. Gee, it sure would be great if they told everybody who they were. So the candidates didn't think that they were going to get this level of scrutiny. And the problem for AIPAC is that the playbook that I think was deployed here in Chicago is one that can be replicated around the country. And so the next primary where they're going to spend millions and millions of dollars to try and get someone elected, the first whiff of AIPAC spending, and this may even come before the spending, is going to lead to, hopefully, ideally, an avalanche of questions to the candidate about where they stand on AIPAC, where they stand on aid to Netanyahu. And those are really hard questions for any candidate to answer in a Democratic electorate right now without alienating, a huge portion of the people they need to vote for them.
Yeah. Joanna, you were going to say something?
Well, I'll just say, and I'll use Laura Fine as an example, a person who would say with a straight face, well, I don't know who they are. I don't have anything to do with it. We can't coordinate. So I've encouraged them to say who their donors are, but I don't know who their donors are. It doesn't pass the smell test at all. Nobody believed her. I don't think anybody believed her. And I think it's evident in the outcome of the election that she, and in what we eventually saw in polling numbers in terms of her favorability, that as voters became aware of AIPAC's support for her, and as her story got less and less credible about her support from AIPAC, her favorability tanked among primary voters, among likely voters. They were going, this lady, whatever you think about Israel, I don't really like being lied to. And she's clearly lying.
Yeah, any political strategy that depends on deceiving voters, it's not a great strategy.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know about that, Jake. That's a whole other conversation. I could do an hour on that. I think most political.
I didn't say it doesn't always work. I said it's not a great strategy.
Okay. Well, define great. We're going to Bill Clinton country. Define great. It's usually the successful strategy employed by people other than me, who's never run a campaign in his life. All right. So let's get into the trash talking, which is in its own level is fascinating. And Jake, you raised this, so you can start, and then Joanna can weigh in.
Jake also do his own trash talking because he's been doing a little himself. And that's
okay. Do you feel free to trash talk? It's such a joke anyway. It's like, we knew what was going on. And so, man, I'm reading the AIPAC guys. I don't even know if there's a name attached to any of these quotes, by the way. So I'll be reading Shia. Shout out Shia Capos. And she'll be like, AIPAC claimed a great victory, or there's a link to an article. AIPAC pounded his chest. Yeah, we do what had to be done. Okay. And then they like double count. Like we blocked. So Illinois, by the way, I think was the only state to have a Democratic primary, any primary yesterday. So we got a lot of attention of Illinois. So like we blocked, and then they inflate some number. 7 tribe members. So like Elon Omar's
squad members.
My God. I got tribe is a different thing. That's hilarious. Keep it in, Chris. No one's perfect. That's all hilarious. That's Joanna was like winking at me. No, don't say that. So remember when I first said it? So we got 2, and then they count Bushra and Kat. Okay, like Bushra got 5% of the vote. I mean, you hardly did anything to block. But in fact, you used Bushra to try to take votes from Kat. You promoted Bushra. If you could have elected Bushra, who is more critical of Israel, arguably, than Kat is. So it's utterly absurd that they're taking credit. You get what I'm like, come on, guys.
Well,
that's
so there's
ridiculous, man.
There's a couple things going on here. I mean, the easiest way to try and understand who they liked and who they didn't is watch the way that they behaved for months and months before this election. So we've already talked about the 4 candidates that they backed through directed contributions and super PAC spending. And then it's pretty easy to find out who they opposed because they spent an enormous amount of money against certain candidates. In Illinois 9, it was Daniel Biss, who they spent $1.5 million against, more than any other candidate in the state. And so for them to pivot sort of down the stretch and try and say, actually, there are other people that we wanted to stop, or we're just trying to stop these people who would be the next members of the squad, et cetera, et cetera. They're full of it, obviously, because, and I think one of the problems they have is coming out of New Jersey, they had egg all over their face because they, made fools of themselves in basically accidentally electing somebody who was far harsher on Israel than the person that they were trying to stop. And now they're here in Illinois. They spent an enormous amount of money. They only won 2 of the 4 seats for $22 million. And they've got to go back to their donors who watched them fall on their face in New Jersey and try and make a straight-faced argument that actually they had a smart strategy in Illinois. And so what they did down the stretch, especially I think personally when they realized that Daniel was going to win, is they said, well, let's throw some money at some of these other candidates so that when the election is over, we can claim that those are the people that we actually opposed.
Yeah.
And now they can turn around and say, see, look to all of our people, to all of the AIPAC donors and supporters out there. We actually had a great night. They're trying to make that claim. It's not believable.
Joanna?
I just want to give a little more context to people who might not be as, I don't know, on Twitter 24/7. Like some of us on the.
Who isn't on Twitter 24/7? No, you guys are.
Go ahead, Joanna.
So what we're talking about is that the election was March 17th. On March 16th, a source, I'm going to read a tweet.
Go.
A source close to AIPAC says the group's main goal in Chicago is stopping who it sees as 6 potential squad members: Robert Peters, Kina Collins, Junaid Ahmad, Yasmin Bankole, Kat Abughazali, and Bushra Amiwala. That's an apparent strategy shift from the New Jersey 11 special election. Who tweeted this? A journalist from Jewish Insider, which is AIPAC's go-to publication for publishing their line. So they moved this, they set a new goalpost the day before the election to say, well, we don't know what's going to happen here. So at minimum, all these people, if they all lose and all of those people did, none of those people won, if all these people lose, then we can claim victory.
Wow. By the way, that lineup that you just read, Joanna, sounds like the lineup for guests on the Ben Joravsky show for January and February. I think most of those
I think AIPAC probably doesn't love your show either.
No, man. Show me some love, AIPAC.
Yeah.
Don't say that, Ben. That's going to come back to haunt you.
Yeah, don't haunt me, man. AIPAC. Here's the thing, man. So they turn on Danny Biss, and you guys both work for Dan Biss. And when he was on the show, we kind of headed in this direction. Joanna pulled that one together. Good job, Joanna. Got Dan Biss to come on the show.
Like it wasn't a heavy lift. He was like, on the show, he was like, yeah.
Well, Evanston guy's chopping it up.
Yeah.
Come on. First of all, he's not really from Evanston. You know that, Jake. There's really people from Evanston.
He's been there long enough. He's been there. We're not going to get into this. We're not going to get into
the guy who worked for. I'm not going to name his name because he gets so scared, but he worked for Jan Schakowsky for years. Is hilarious on the subject of the arrogance of Evanstonians who proclaim you're not really from Evanston, and I fall in that camp, even though I only lived there for 6 years. I should get over it. All right. So in many ways, Dan Biss is going through a very serious existential thought process, evolution, if you would, Joanna and Jake, on the issue of Israel. And it's just like fundamental to his core. And I always say this to my lefty listeners, guys, give a guy like Biss some slack on this. He grew up, the world was one way. He was taught he went to religious school. He was taught in Israel. The existence of Israel was so key to his identity as a Jewish person, to Jewish people in general. And this fundamental existential view of the world has been seriously challenged in the last 3 years in ways that old geezers like me can't imagine. Okay? And I always give people like Dan Biss credit. I'm like, you got to give him a little slack. You got to allow him the room to, quote unquote, evolve and transform. And I know there's a lot of people go, no way, I'm not giving slack. It's genocide. It's slaughter. I cannot allow it. They have to be where I am right now. I'm like, not everybody is where you are right now. And I'm I believe this to my heart. I'm watching Dan Biss. It's not just, it's a pragmatic thing. He knows what he has to say to get elected, but I also think it's a personal thing, Joanna. I think the man is struggling in some ways with these like fundamental questions of like, will I always support Israel no matter what they do? At some point, like, have they just become a rogue state that bears no resemblance to the ideal that was planted in my brain when I was a little kid? These are serious issues, Jake and Joanna, that a lot of Jewish people are going through. And Danny Biss is going through this stuff. And people who sit there in judgment like they've never gone through it. They don't know what it's like. They're like, he took money from this AIPAC guy 5 years ago. He's no good. Like, the world was different 5 years ago. I don't think Brandon Johnson was speaking out on this issue 5 years ago. I love Brandon very much. Everybody knows that. He fought for the ceasefire ordinance in city council, took a lot of heat for that. But I don't believe this was a number one issue on his agenda 10 years ago or 5 years ago or et cetera. My point is things are changing fast.
Yeah.
And people like Dan Biss are trying to keep up with the changes politically from a pragmatic standpoint. And I also think personally, in terms of who they are and their fundamental beliefs. That is my oration. Joanna, you go first, and Jake, you go second and respond. Go ahead.
To zoom out, what you said is right, but I also think this is not just about Daniel. It's about our entire political establishment has had to evolve in the last couple of years. Today I saw Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego came out and swore off AIPAC funding. He's a potential 2028 presidential contender. We're seeing people who would have never felt comfortable saying, nope, I don't want to touch that. I don't like what's happening in Gaza. You're seeing people, not just for political reasons, but also have to confront what's actually happening on the ground. I will say, I think that the moment where the world's attention turned to the famine that was being caused in Gaza by the Israeli blockade on humanitarian aid in, I believe it was August, just of 2025, that was a huge turning point for a lot of people. It's not that there wasn't famine going on before August 2025. In fact, humanitarian aid had been blocked on and off since long before October 7th, and many of us know that. But I don't think you can condemn people for not knowing everything and not having their attention on it until once they learned and got new information, their opinion evolved. And I think that's something we should welcome. It's okay to change your view once you get new information. That moment in August was a turning point. I think it was a turning point for where Daniel Biss was in terms of his positions on this issue. But I think it was also a turning point for a whole host of elected officials and politicians across the country on the Democratic side. I remember right around that time, Pete Buttigieg went on Pod Save America and didn't quite condemn what was happening strongly enough and created a huge uproar, and then had to come back out and be like, no, by the way, I'm against famine as a tactic of war, and I condemn what's going on, and I don't think we should fund it. Like, that was a pretty major moment for a lot of people. And I think we have to give people the space to, when they receive new information, get to the right place.
Yeah. I 2 points I want to make. First is to just echo what Joanna said. And I think we have a tendency, especially on the left, when somebody adopts one of the positions that we've been hammering on them to adopt for a long time, and this isn't necessarily specific to Daniel, to any politician, especially on the left, there are a lot in the Democratic Party, especially a lot on the left, who will say, oh, this is just a cynical move. You don't really believe this. What about what you said before? And essentially use that as an opportunity to criticize, as opposed to a victory that should be welcomed and rewarded. I mean, if somebody updates their position, changes their position to come closer to what you want to see, you should celebrate that, not attack it. And that's, I think, a point that I think a lot of political folks are trying to sort of keep up with where their voters are, and obviously what's going on in the region, not necessarily specific to Daniel. But I do think what is specific to Daniel, especially with respect to his views on Israel, which I've heard him express in many, many times, and I believe this to be 100% true, Daniel's criticism of AIPAC is especially dangerous for AIPAC exactly because he has such a deep personal connection to Israel. And the reason it is so dangerous, and that personal connection is so dangerous, is because when he stands up and says, we need to block offensive weapons to Israel, or we need to recognize Palestinian statehood, he cannot be dismissed as anti-Semitic. The way that AIPAC and others try to dismiss voices on the left as simply being anti-Semitic when they take those positions. And my hope is that people recognize that he truly believes the things that he says when he talks about fighting for peace and justice and self-determination for Israelis and Palestinians in the region. And I also hope people recognize the unique value that he can add to this conversation because of who he is and where he comes from, and try and find ways to work with him instead of attack him because he, isn't necessarily all the way there on some of the thornier pieces of this conversation. So he is a unique threat to AIPAC. That's why they spent $1.5 million to attack him, similar to the way they spent money to attack Tom Malinowski, who was friendlier to AIPAC, even friendlier to AIPAC than anybody in Illinois previously. They really don't want to see, especially Jewish voices that are critical to Israel. Like Robert Peters is Jewish. They were very much dead set against him. Daniel, who is Jewish, very much dead set against him because those voices are so hard to dismiss once they get into Congress.
Oh, yeah. Listen, they have two. I've been watching you guys AIPAC for a while. And so the one attack is very MAGA-like. So they'll go after the squad. Okay. Boomer got it right. The squad. And they'll be like, oh, they're radical leftists. And, my guy Mandani, they'll rip him. And Omar and Talib, the game, Jake and Joanna, they did radical leftists and radical Muslims and this, that, the other thing. And that's where they kind of like merge with the MAGA rhetoric. Then they get this, Dan Biss here in Evanston, but the kid up, Levin in Michigan. That was before. That was a race before, Jake. Before you were. It was like a couple of years ago. They knocked him out of for not being hard enough, and that's right. That's how they go after. Like they got to keep the Jewish legislators in line. Or we're going to keep you in line, boy. You're going to have to toe this line. We're going to say you're anti-Israel, and then you're going to, all your friends and all your family, they won't invite you to dinner anymore because you think you've betrayed your people. So that's like a two-way thing they're fighting. Do you understand what I'm saying, Jake?
This is what happened in Illinois 9. There was an Orthodox candidate running in Illinois 9 named Bruce Leon. Yeah. And he self-funded for several $100,000. He never really broke through the top tier of candidates. And there were a number of news stories in late December and early January about how AIPAC was trying to push him out of the race to try and consolidate Orthodox Jewish support behind Laura Fine. And a lot of the allegations that were made by Leon himself in terms of what AIPAC was saying, the threats that they were making to him, and sort of what it would mean if he stayed in the race, they were, I think really personal in a way that was deeply upsetting to him and really, I think, caused a lot of unrest within the community there. And that's an Orthodox candidate who loves Israel, loves AIPAC, wants to be, had absolutely no problem with any of their position, and they went after him. Similar, a little bit different, but similar in Illinois 7 with Jason Friedman. I mean, AIPAC, Jason Friedman, I think, shares a lot of similar views with AIPAC and was very close with AIPAC and other local Jewish organizations, and wound up being criticized and attacked by them because he didn't have enough of a shot to win, and so they wanted to find ways to undermine him and delegitimize his candidacy as well. All that is to say, these folks are ruthless, and they are not above trying to take their own people out when they think that it can give them some sort of advantage somewhere else, sort of on the chessboard. But voters are seeing through it.
Joanna?
Jake, you're going to have to jog my memory, but I also recall that when AIPAC was pressuring Bruce Leon out of the race, they specifically said that Daniel Biss being elected would lead to like Jewish bloodshed.
That's right. The next synagogue attack, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to the effect of, if you stay on the race and Daniel wins, the next synagogue attack will be your fault.
Yeah, Jewish blood.
And to be clear, that's what Bruce Leon recounted publicly about what he understood the threats to be. And And that was criticized by several rabbis in the Evanston area for being beyond the pale. I think it absolutely is disgusting rhetoric. And, you know, it's the type of threat that only comes from a fanatical organization that is willing to do anything to undermine and attack people they see standing in their way, even if those people agree with them 100% of the time.
Joanna, there was something you wanted to add?
I don't know. This is a lot here. I think that what I want to get to is, what does this mean? We don't usually have a cycle like this where there's 4 open congressional seats. And where I think this is the first time really where we've seen this degree of super PAC spending in Illinois. And it's been jarring for a lot of us. Some of us have been working in campaigns our whole career in Illinois and have never experienced anything quite like this before. And also, what does it mean for the next states? How can they look at how we responded to the role AIPAC was playing, and the tactics and the shell PACs and the shell donors and the shell vendors, and how can they take all of that and apply it to the next cycle? I think we're just trying to draw some conclusions to make folks know what we just lived through and experienced and prevailed over in some cases.
And also,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a number of pieces of advice for anybody running in any other race in the country who may encounter a similar situation. But the first thing on the list, at the very top of the page, if you are running for Congress or any federal office, and you have either taken positions or you will take positions in a campaign that will put you on the other side of AIPAC, mainly opposing unconditional aid to Israel, which seems to be their litmus test.
Yep.
My advice to you is, don't talk to AIPAC, don't meet with AIPAC, don't pick up the phone when they call you, do not send them anything in writing about where you stand on any issue, because any communication with AIPAC will be weaponized against you at some point in the race. We saw it here in multiple races. I'm sure we will see it again in other places. If you know they're coming for you, you can't stop them. You can't convince them otherwise. You can't play nice with them. You have to reject all attempts to communicate with them, because it will absolutely be weaponized against you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, even if you know the person, even if you've known the person for a long time and you consider them a friend, it's just, you can't do it. There's no good faith operation here.
All right. Let's close by just some thoughts on the 4 congressional races and the outcome. So candidates that AIPAC did not support were victorious in the 9th congressional district, the 7th congressional district. Candidates that the AIPAC shells supported were victorious in the 2nd congressional district and in the 8th congressional district. My personal opinion, for what it's worth, is that in the 2nd congressional district, it was more, I'll take the turkey and do what I want. You guys can feel free to disagree with me on that. And that in the 7th congressional district, I just don't even know if AIPAC broke through as a force. And I don't know what happened in the 8th and the 9th, as I don't have a clear picture of that. I would love for you guys to weigh in. So whoever wants to go first, and Joanna knows this, Jake, feel free to disagree with me if you want. So go ahead, Jake.
I always feel free to disagree with you, Ben. No problem there. I mean, look, we nominated 4 Democrats. I think all 4 of them are going to win. They're all going to go to Congress. I think on 95% of the issues, all 4 of them are going to vote same way. I think all 4 of them oppose Trump. I think all 4 of them are, reliably blue in many, many ways. There is some gradation there for sure. I think, Melissa Bean is definitely more moderate. And I think we'll see, where I think Daniel Biss is absolutely more progressive. Will join the progressive caucus. we'll see where they shake out. The rubber is going to meet the road on some of these issues in the Middle East, and it's going to meet the road on some of these issues around things like crypto regulation and AI regulation, and how part of this too is going to be just on posture. I mean, how hard are we willing to fight? Are you willing to shut down the government to stop Trump? Are you willing to vote against a war powers resolution in Iran? Do you generally approach these issues as trying to find common ground with Republicans and you're willing to compromise here and there? Or do you stand up for your values and don't give an inch, especially when it comes to, the fascism and terror that we're seeing from the federal government today? So I think that's where you're going to see some difference between some of these folks. And look, the bottom line here too is I think especially for some of these more moderate members, I think if you're not representing your district, if you're not representing Democratic voters who are pulling more and more to the left these days, you could easily draw a primary challenge down the road. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I think we saw this in North Carolina with Valerie Foushee, who had previously taken AIPAC money, got a hard-charging progressive challenger, a much younger woman, and had to swear off AIPAC and had to swear off the AIPAC money pretty quickly after receiving it in previous cycles. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a similar dynamic here in the few years ahead.
Joanna?
I agree with that. And with respect to your suspicion that maybe Commissioner Miller will take the Harold Washington approach, I hope that's right. Obviously, she didn't feel that she could indicate that as she was a candidate, but I hope that folks as they're organizing will keep that prospect in mind and try to engage with her in a way that gives her the space to get to the right place or get to a better place. And Melissa Bean I didn't work on that race. I wonder whether Melissa Bean even needed the AIPAC support. She was a household name already, but it certainly didn't hurt her. I mean, she won handily. I can't say it didn't hurt her, but she won handily. And I hope, again, that we can approach these seats and these elected officials from an organizing standpoint. How can we push people and how can we create space for them to move?
Yeah.
Well, and if we get them to move, let's celebrate that.
Yes.
And bring them along, not attack and undermine for things that happen in very, very hard fought primaries.
So in defense of my lefty friends on that score, Jake, I just got to tell you, I may be the champion grudge holder of all time. There may be some people in Joanna's family that beat me. I'm neck and neck with them. When I hold a grudge, I hold a grudge. And so I can understand why it's a little harder. There's some candidates out there, nothing to do with AIPAC or Israel or Middle East, who took positions in the past. I'm like, oh, look at you now, being progressive. Okay. It's a little harder to do than you're saying, Jake.
Hold them to account. No, look, I hold them to account. And if they're moving in the right direction, keep pushing. And if they're moving in the wrong direction, primary them. Yeah. I got no problem with that.
Well, we'll close with this. This is interesting because you guys both talked about how for the first time we had 4 open seats. And the tradition usually when it comes to Democrats in Cook County and congressional races, leave the incumbent alone. And that there were so many people running in the 9th because Jen Schakowsky had been the congressperson from 1998. Joanna, think about you too, Jake. You were like at Nichols Junior High or something. I mean, 1998 is a long time. You may not even have been at Nichols yet. And I don't even know if you went to Nichols. But you could be a Haven kid.
Another time. We'll leave the Evanston, the District 65 chatter for another time.
But my point is, she was been a congresswoman for a long time. Now maybe Joanna's laughing at the very thought somebody will challenge an incumbent, and maybe it's like, why no? Wow, yeah, mind blown at that thought.
I think the world we live in today, the democratic political sort of atmosphere we live in today, makes it more likely to see more primary challenges the old style machine obviously is dead. I don't need to tell you, Ben, that kind of sort of rank and file voter, I think, is really moving to the left, especially in Chicago and across the country. And yeah, I mean, look, I think you've seen some really interesting fundraising tactics by some of these candidates who have drummed up an enormous amount of money from non-traditional sources. I think you'll see people catching fire in different and interesting ways. So if I were an elected official at any level, but especially in Congress, I would run like I'm going to get a hard-fought primary every single time, and I would operate like that, when I'm far off in Washington, D.C. voting on things.
All right, before we shut down, any final thoughts you have, Joanna? Floor is yours.
No, I think we've covered a lot today.
Okay.
I feel encouraged after this cycle. We didn't win them all, but we showed that you can win. Just because AIPAC's coming in spending $5 million against your candidate does not mean that you're going to lose the race. You can win.
That's right.
Stand on principle, run hard, call out the BS, and you can win.
All right, very good. Joanna Klonsky, Jake Lewis, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys coming on the show. And also I want to thank our producer, Chris. He does a great job. And Joanna and Jake agree with me when they say, hey, producer Chris, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Peace and love, everybody. Take care, Joanna. Take care, Jake.